The notification's pale glow pierced the darkness of my downtown apartment just past 11 o'clock on the night of December 19th. I'd been reviewing quarterly financials. My desk cluttered with spreadsheets and a half-empty glass of Merlot. When my phone vibrated against the glass coffee table, a sharp buzz that made my wine glass tremble slightly, sending ripples across the deep red liquid. Motion detected. Koi Pond South Garden. I didn't panic. Panic is what amateurs do. The kind of knee-jerk reaction that leads to mistakes in high-stakes deals. Instead, I set down my pen with deliberate calm, picked up my phone, and opened the security app with the same precision I used to negotiate multi-million-dollar contracts for corporate landscapes. The 4K night vision footage loaded instantly, revealing every detail in crisp monochrome, the water feature I'd engineered with my own hands. Drawing from principles of Japanese Zen gardens I'd studied during a trip to Kyoto 5 years ago, the meticulously raked gravel patterns that evoked ripples in a serene pond, the ancient podocarpus trees that had cost me more than most people's luxury sedans. Sourced from rare nurseries in California where they specialize in century-old specimens. And there, standing beside my $50 koi pond, home to nishikigoi fish imported from champion breeders in Japan. Each one a living artwork with scales shimmering like jewels under moonlight, were my younger sister Scarlett and her fiancé Evan. Their wine glasses caught the moonlight like crystalline weapons, glinting ominously. I increased the volume, and their voices came through with perfect clarity. Thanks to the high-end audio sensors I'd installed alongside the cameras, technology I'd researched extensively after a client in Beverly Hills had their estate vandalized. "It's a gold mine," Evan said, gesturing grandly at the water. His real estate agent's swagger fully deployed. The same body language he probably used to sell overpriced condos to desperate buyers in a market inflated by foreign capital. As recent reports from the National Association of Realtors had highlighted a surge in international investments dumping funds before fiscal year ends. The foreign investment group lands on the morning of the 21st. 10 o'clock sharp. They need to dump the budget before the fiscal year ends, so they're desperate to close before Christmas. He took a long sip of wine. Probably from my parents' collection, the expensive Bordeaux my father had saved for special occasions. Vintages like the 1982 Chateau Latour that could fetch thousands at auction. Once they see this garden, Evan continued, they'll tack on an extra $400,000 to the offer immediately. After the ink dries, we kick Nora to the curb. By then, it's a done deal. I watched Scarlett giggle. That high-pitched performative laugh she'd perfected for her Instagram videos, where she posed as a lifestyle influencer with sponsored posts about luxury weddings and designer handbags. Amassing followers in a digital world obsessed with curated perfection. She's going to lose her mind. But who cares? It's mom and dad's deed. Anything planted in the ground belongs to the land. Right? That's what you said. Exactly. Fixtures become real estate. It's basic property law. My heart rate actually slowed as a cold clarity washed over me. Like the first frost settling on autumn leaves. I took a screenshot, then another, capturing every incriminating frame. I downloaded the video file and immediately uploaded it to 3 separate cloud storage accounts: Google Drive, Dropbox, and a secure enterprise-level service I'd subscribed to after reading about data breaches in Forbes. I looked at the timestamp. They wanted to sell my assets at 10 a.m. on the 21st. Too bad my showroom was scheduled to close at that time. I am 42 years old. I own Bennett Greenery, a landscape architecture firm that has designed gardens for Fortune 500 headquarters. Luxury resorts like the ones in Maui where I'd incorporated native Hawaiian flora to comply with environmental regulations. And the kinds of private estates that never appear in real estate listings because they're sold through whispered conversations at country clubs in places like Palm Beach. My family sees me as a glorified gardener, dismissing my expertise in horticultural engineering and sustainable design, ignoring how I've integrated smart irrigation systems powered by IoT devices to reduce water usage by up to 50%. As per studies from the Environmental Protection Agency, they have never understood that 5 years ago, when my father Charles called me into his study with that particular tone, the one that meant he was about to ask for something while pretending it was for my benefit, I signed a contract. A real, legally binding contract drafted by my corporate attorney, David Ross, who specialized in real estate disputes and had a track record of winning cases involving multi-million-dollar properties. The terms were simple, yet ironclad. Inspired by consignment agreements I'd seen in high-end art galleries, I would invest $300 of my own capital to transform their overgrown, embarrassing backyard into what the contract called a live showroom facility. They would get a 5-star living space for free, complete with features like automated lighting that mimic natural sunlight cycles to promote plant health. I would get a venue to bring VIP clients, a place where CEOs and resort managers could walk through a fully mature garden and see exactly what they were buying, rather than squinting at architectural renderings and imagining what a Japanese maple might look like in 10 years. Its fiery red leaves turning heads in fall as described in botanical journals. For 10 years, I would maintain the property at no cost to them, incorporating organic pest control methods I'd learned from certifications with the International Society of Arboriculture. In exchange, I retained full ownership of all inventory and installation materials planted on the property, with the explicit right to remove said inventory should the agreement be terminated early or should asset security be compromised. Clauses bolstered by precedents from landmark cases like the 2018 California Supreme Court ruling on fixtures versus chattels. My father had signed it while watching a football game, barely glancing away from the screen. My mother had signed it without reading past the first paragraph, too busy with her social calendar. They thought they were getting free landscaping from their daughter. I was building a $300 investment portfolio disguised as a garden, one that appreciated in value like fine wine or rare collectibles. The memory surfaced with bitter clarity, amplified by the sting of betrayal. 36 hours ago at Scarlett's engagement party. The backyard glowing with string lights I'd personally strung to create a magical ambiance. And the air thick with the synthetic joy of people pretending to be happier than they were. Fueled by champagne and superficial chatter, Evan had cornered me near the bar, shoving a stack of papers into my hands. Music pounded from the speakers, some top 40 songs Scarlett had insisted was essential. Blasting hits like those from Taylor Swift's latest album that dominated charts, and guests laughed too loudly over their third glasses of champagne. Their conversations laced with envy and one-upmanship. Just a permit for the patio extension. Nora, he'd shouted over the noise, his breath sharp with whiskey, the kind of single malt scotch that real estate sharks like him used to seal deals. Your signature on the third page. Quick favor for your sister's fiancé. I'd been distracted, tired. I'd spent that morning installing a specimen birch tree for a client in the city, its delicate white bark peeling like pages from an ancient book, and my shoulders ached from the physical labor that my family never appreciated. I took the pen he offered. Here? I'd asked, pointing to a line flagged with a pink sticky note. Perfect. You're a lifesaver. I signed because they were family. Because that's what you do. Or at least, what I'd been conditioned to do. Growing up in a household where loyalty was demanded but rarely reciprocated. Now, sitting in my apartment with the video evidence glowing on my screen, I understood the deception, buried somewhere in that stack, probably in the middle, camouflaged by permit applications and municipal forms from the city's zoning board. Had been a waiver, something that said I acknowledged the upcoming sale. Something that said I released any claim to improvements made to the property. Something that, in Evan's mind, would make stealing $300 of my work legally defensible, perhaps drawing from shady tactics exposed in investigative reports on real estate fraud by outlets like the New York Times. He'd underestimated two things. First, I don't sign contracts without reading them. Even at parties, even when I'm tired, that waiver, whatever it said, would have my signature on the wrong line or the wrong date or some other fatal defect that I'd engineered instinctively. Even in my exhaustion, a habit honed from years of scrutinizing fine print in business deals. Second, I don't need a contract to protect what's mine. I already had one, so I protected myself in advance. I didn't call Scarlett to scream. That's what the crazy older sister would do. The role they'd been trying to cast me in since we were children. The one who was too sensitive, Too intense. Who couldn't take a joke? Always the outlier in family photos where Scarlett shone with effortless charm. Instead, I scrolled through my contacts and called David Ross. He answered on the second ring. David always answered. That's why his hourly rate made my accountant wince. Charging fees comparable to top litigators in Manhattan. Nora, it's 11 at night. This better be good. David, I said, my voice level, almost pleasant, masking the storm raging inside. Remember that consignment agreement we drafted for the Bennett Estate showroom? The one your parents signed without reading? Yes. I need you to prepare the asset recovery protocols. We have 35 hours. There was a pause. Then, with the tone of a man who just realized his evening was about to become far more interesting. What happened? They're selling the house on December 21st at 10 a.m. Foreign investors. Cash deal. They're trying to include my inventory as part of the real estate to inflate the price. Can you prove it? I have a video confession. High definition. Time-stamped. Another pause. Longer this time. Then David laughed, a short, sharp sound like a blade being drawn. Forward everything. I'll have the documentation ready by 8 a.m. Nora? Yes. This is going to be beautiful. I hung up and returned to the security footage. I watched the video 3 more times. Memorizing every word, every gesture. Scarlett's careless laugh. Evan's predatory grin. By the 4th viewing, I felt nothing at all. That's when I knew I was ready. Dawn broke over the city on December 20th with a bruising purple light, turning the frost on my apartment windows into sheets of burning crystal that refracted the early sun like shattered diamonds. I'd been awake for hours, sitting at my dining table with my laptop open, surrounded by 5 years' worth of invoices, contracts, and botanical certification documents, stacks of paper that represented not just business records, but the blood, sweat, and unyielding determination I'd poured into Bennett Greenery. The coffee in my mug had gone cold, but I barely noticed, my mind racing through scenarios like a strategist plotting a corporate takeover. By the time I walked into David's office shortly after 8, the city was fully awake, unaware of the legal war one was about to launch, a battle not fought with weapons, but with clauses and precedents that could dismantle lives as effectively as any siege. David's office occupied the 42nd floor of a glass tower downtown. The kind of place where the receptionist's desk cost more than a mid-range sedan. And the coffee came from beans that had been ethically sourced from remote Ethiopian highlands. Roasted to perfection in small batches as per the latest trends in sustainable luxury reported by specialty coffee journals. The view from the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the bustling streets below. A reminder of the high-stakes world we navigated. David himself was 55, gray-haired, and possessed the particular smile of a man who genuinely enjoyed destroying people in court, his eyes lighting up like a predator spotting prey when a case turned juicy. He was smiling now, leaning back in his ergonomic chair as he gestured to the screen where my security footage played on loop. The incriminating conversation between Scarlett and Evan repeating like a damning echo. You weren't exaggerating, he said, his voice laced with admiration. This is prosecutorial-grade evidence. Your brother-in-law-to-be is a fool. He paused, sipping his coffee with deliberate slowness, savoring the moment. He's a real estate agent, I replied, settling into the leather chair across from his desk, the material creaking softly under my weight. He understands property law the way a line cook understands molecular gastronomy, enough to be dangerous, but not enough to avoid burning everything down. David chuckled, a low rumble that echoed in the sleek, minimalist office adorned with abstract art pieces that probably cost as much as my annual payroll. Walk me through the botanical angle again, he prompted, leaning forward with the intensity of a chess master analyzing an opponent's fatal blunder. This is where we win. I opened my laptop and pulled up the technical diagrams, cross-sections of root systems rendered in precise 3D models using software like AutoCAD, which I'd mastered during my landscape architecture degree at Cornell, photographs of underground installations taken during the initial setup, showing the meticulous layering of soil amendments based on pH tests and nutrient profiles, certification documents from horticultural engineering firms accredited by the American Society of Landscape Architects. Evan's entire strategy relies on the legal principle of fixtures. I explained, my voice steady but infused with the passion of someone defending their life's work. In property law, anything permanently attached to the land, anything that's rooted in the native soil, becomes part of the real estate. If I had planted those trees directly into the ground, he'd be right. They'd belong to whoever owns the deed. Transferable like the house itself under statutes like those outlined in the Uniform Commercial Code. But you didn't, David interjected, his eyes gleaming as he anticipated the twist. No, I confirmed, rotating the diagram on screen to show the barrier between the specimen roots and the earth. A high-tech fabric engineered to withstand decades of growth while preventing integration. Every single high-value specimen on that property, every ancient podocarpus, every Japanese maple with its delicate, lace-like leaves that turn crimson in autumn as if painted by nature's own brush, every ornamental pear tree that blossoms in spring like a fireworks display, is planted inside what we call root control bags. They're industrial-grade fabric containers, developed from technology used in urban forestry projects to prevent root damage to sidewalks. As seen in initiatives by cities like New York and San Francisco. To the naked eye, the trees look like they're planted normally, seamlessly integrated into the landscape. Underground, they're essentially in enormous pots. Isolated systems that allow for easy transplantation without ecological disruption. Biologically and legally, I continued, their roots have never touched my parents' property. The native soil remains uncontaminated, preserving the site's original ecosystem while complying with environmental guidelines from the USDA. The trees aren't fixtures, they're chattels. Movable personal property consigned to the estate under a temporary display agreement. They belong to Bennett Greenery. They always have, backed by case law from disputes like the 1995 Florida ruling on nursery stock versus real property. David leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled in that thoughtful pose I'd come to associate with impending victory. And you can prove this? I have installation records timestamped with GPS data from the equipment we used. Purchase receipts from suppliers like Monrovia Nursery, where I negotiated bulk deals for rare varietals, and third-party certification from horticultural engineers who inspected the site annually. Their reports detailing root ball integrity with metrics like girth measurements and health assessments using tools like soil moisture probes. What about the koi pond? Portable water feature, I said without hesitation. The liner is a custom EPDM membrane. Removable like a pool liner, the filtration system incorporates biofilters inspired by natural wetlands. As per designs from aquaponics experts, the lighting uses low-voltage LEDs that can be unplugged and relocated. All removable. The fish themselves are Bennett Greenery assets. I have individual RFID tags on every single koi. Tracked via a database app I developed with a tech consultant, ensuring traceability like high-end livestock. They're worth $50 collectively, with some champion bloodlines fetching prices at auctions comparable to fine art sales reported in outlets like Christie's aquatic catalogs. They're not pets, they're inventory. Depreciable assets on my balance sheet. He was grinning now, a full, wolfish smile that revealed years of courtroom triumphs. You magnificent, paranoid genius. I prefer thorough, I shot back, though a flicker of pride warmed my chest amidst the chill of betrayal. We spent the next hour reviewing the contract I'd signed with my father 5 years ago. David had drafted it himself, and reading it now was like watching a master chess player explain why they'd sacrificed a pawn 12 moves earlier, each clause a calculated trap. Informed by his experience in similar family business disputes that often ended in multi-million settlements. Clause 7. Bennett Greenery retains full ownership of all botanical specimens, water features, and installation materials consigned to the property for display purposes. Said materials remain the exclusive property of Bennett Greenery and may be removed at any time should the client terminate the agreement or should asset security be compromised. Language pulled from boilerplate consignment laws but customized with specifics on horticultural assets. Clause 12. Acceleration clause. In the event the agreement is terminated prior to the completion of the 10-year term, all waived maintenance fees shall become immediately due and payable. Monthly maintenance fee schedule attached as Appendix C. I'd never charged my parents maintenance fees, viewing it as a familial gesture. But for 5 years, I donated approximately 15 hours per week, keeping that garden immaculate, pruning with precision shears to encourage optimal growth patterns, fertilizing with organic compounds tailored to each plant's needs based on soil tests, treating for pests using integrated pest management techniques I'd certified in through the Entomological Society of America, adjusting irrigation systems with sensors that responded to real-time weather data from APIs like those from the National Weather Service. The contract specified this would be provided free of charge for 10 years. Unless they broke the contract early, a safety net I'd insisted on. Foreseeing potential family friction from patterns I'd observed growing up. Pull up Appendix C, David said, his pen poised over a legal pad. I did, and the maintenance fee schedule appeared on screen. $750 per month. Escalating by 3% annually to account for inflation. Reflecting industry standards from the Association of Landscape Professionals. 60 months at an average of $780 per month. He calculated aloud. Approximately $46,800 in waived fees. Ad removal costs. Crane rental at market rates of $500 per hour. Labor for a 10-person crew. Equipment transport via specialized haulers, another $20 easy. Then penalties for breach of contract. Let's be conservative and say $10. Round it to $95. I said firmly. Include emergency relocation fees and compensation for business disruption. I have to cancel client meetings to handle this. Lost opportunities with resorts in Aspen where I was pitching winter hardy designs. $95 it is. David pulled out his legal pad and began drafting, his fountain pen scratching across expensive paper with the rhythm of inevitability. If they don't pay within 30 days, you file a mechanic's lien against the property. The house becomes legally frozen, they can't sell it, can't refinance it, can't transfer the deed. It stays on public record like a scarlet letter until they pay every cent. Visible to any title search conducted by potential buyers. I watched him write, the ink flowing like blood from a wound, and a tightness gripped my throat. David, I said quietly, the weight of the moment pressing down. Evan and Scarlett think they're going to kick me to the curb and pocket $400 of my work. I know, my parents are letting it happen. They're complicit. They didn't even warn me. David stopped writing and looked up. His expression gentle, almost fatherly, a rare softness in a man who'd dismantled fortunes. Nora, this isn't revenge. This is asset protection. You invested $300 and 5 years of skilled labor. Building something that's not just beautiful but valuable in a market where luxury landscaping can boost property values by 20%. As Zillow reports, they're attempting to commit what amounts to corporate theft, akin to embezzlement cases I've handled. What you're doing, taking back your property, is the most rational, professional response possible. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. The emotional storm brewing beneath my composed exterior. When do you want to move? He asked, resuming his notes. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., the same time as the showing. No, right before. I want to be pulling out of the driveway just as they're pulling in. The image flashed in my mind, their faces contorting in shock. The investors witnessing the unraveling of their scheme. The garden's beauty stripped away like a veil torn from a deceptive facade. That afternoon, I returned to Bennett Greenery's main facility, a 3-acre compound in the industrial district with greenhouses climate controlled to mimic tropical environments for exotic imports. Equipment yards stocked with state-of-the-art machinery like hydraulic tree spades. And a staff of 47 skilled workers. These people weren't employees, they were craftsmen, arborists who could diagnose tree diseases by touch. Identifying fungal infections like Phytophthora with the accuracy of lab tests. Irrigation specialists who understood hydrology like classical musicians understood Bach. Designing systems that conserved water in line with California's drought regulations. equipment operators who could thread a crane hook through a 6-inch gap without scratching bark. Their skills honed through certifications from the Tree Care Industry Association. They were loyal to me because I paid them well, above market wages with benefits like health insurance and profit sharing, and treated them with respect. Never asking them to cut corners. Always prioritizing safety and quality in an industry plagued by shortcuts. I gathered the senior crew in the main office. Marcus, my head arborist with his weathered hands and encyclopedic knowledge of plant pathology, Jenny, who managed logistics with the precision of a supply chain expert, using software like SAP for inventory tracking, and Tom, who operated our heavy equipment like an extension of his own body, having logged thousands of hours on cranes certified for lifting loads up to 50 tons. Emergency relocation, I said without preamble, my voice cutting through the hum of the office like a command in a war room. Site: the Bennett Estate. Time: tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. We're pulling everything, every tree. The pond system, the irrigation network, full asset recovery. Marcus raised an eyebrow, his 60 years in the landscaping industry giving him zero tolerance for drama. Your parents' place, he said flatly. It wasn't a question. Yes. Are they selling the house? Trying to, with our inventory listed as part of the property value. Inflating it dishonestly. He nodded slowly, understanding the stakes. You want the crane truck? I want all 3 crane trucks. I want the water tankers equipped with aerators to keep the koi oxygenated during transport. I want every available flatbed and every piece of extraction equipment we own. I want it to look like a military operation, efficient, unstoppable. Jenny was already pulling up schedules on her tablet, her fingers flying across the screen. We'll need to cancel the Preston job, a high-end residential install in the hills. Cancel it. Tell them we'll comp them 50% for the inconvenience, reschedule with priority. Nora, Tom said carefully, his voice gravelly from years outdoors. If we're pulling mature trees with root bags, we're going to leave some serious holes in the ground. I know, the lawn's going to look like a geometric Swiss cheese. Craters exposing the raw earth. I'm counting on it. The visual shock will underscore the message. Understanding dawned on their faces. A mix of respect and grim satisfaction. Marcus smiled, rare and sharp, like a blade glinting in sunlight. How long do we have? 16 hours. Then we better get started. By evening, every piece of equipment had been inspected, fueled, and staged in the yard, the crane's booms extended for calibration. The tanker's pumps tested for flow rates. The crew had run through the extraction sequence twice, simulating the lifts with dummy loads to ensure no damage to the specimens. We'd loaded the water tankers with temporary holding tanks for the koi, complete with filtration to mimic their pond environment. We'd prepared straps, rigging, and support structures for specimens worth more than most people earned in a year. Trees that had appreciated in value like blue-chip stocks. I stood in the equipment yard as the sun set, the sky bleeding orange and red like a warning, watching my team work with the precision of a surgical unit preparing for a complex operation. My phone rang. Mom appeared on the screen. I answered, steeling myself. Nora, honey. Her voice was honey sweet. The tone she used when she wanted something, laced with the manipulation I'd only recently recognized. Can you come by early tomorrow around 9? Evan has some friends coming over to see the house. Maybe you could trim the hedges. Make it look nice for your sister. Friends. Not buyers. Not investors. She was lying, weaving deception like the intricate patterns in her social club's gossip circles. They all knew what was happening tomorrow. And they wanted me to show up and play the role of the helpful daughter one last time, to make their stolen garden look perfect for the people who would help them profit from my work. That lie killed the last ember of guilt I'd been nursing, extinguishing it like a flame underwater. Don't worry, Mom, I said, my voice warm and guileless. Hiding the storm. By tomorrow morning, the garden will look exactly like it's supposed to. Oh, wonderful, you're such a good daughter. I don't know what we'd do without you. I hung up without saying goodbye, the click echoing in my ear like finality. Then I returned to my office where David had emailed the final documentation. I printed everything: the consignment agreement, the technical certifications, the maintenance fee invoice with $95 in bold red ink at the bottom, glaring like an accusation. I organized it all into a 3-ring binder with colored tabs: legal, professional, irrefutable. Then I printed one more thing: a simple company directive on Bennett Greenery letterhead: asset security compromised, immediate retrieval authorized. I signed it, dated it December 20th, and placed it in the front of the binder. Tomorrow morning, I wouldn't be the hurt daughter, the betrayed sister, the underestimated eldest child. I would be the CEO of a $3 million company recovering stolen property, standing tall in a world that had tried to diminish me. Sleep was a ghost that refused to visit that night. But not because of anxiety, my mind was simply too active. Running through logistics like a high-speed simulation. Reviewing contingencies for weather disruptions based on forecasts from the National Weather Service predicting clear skies. Anticipating reactions from my family that I'd modeled after decades of their predictable patterns of denial and deflection. By the time my alarm went off at 5:30 on the morning of December 21st, I'd already been awake for an hour, watching the winter dawn turn my apartment windows from black to gray to pale gold, the light filtering through like a promise of resolution. I dressed carefully, work boots reinforced with steel toes for safety on site, dark jeans practical for the dirt and labor ahead, a Bennett Greenery jacket with the company logo embroidered over the heart, a symbol of the empire I'd built from scratch. Starting with a single client in a suburban backyard and expanding to international projects like eco-resorts in Costa Rica where I'd incorporated rainforest biodiversity principles. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw what I needed to see: not a daughter burdened by familial ties, but a professional handling a business matter with the unflinching resolve of a CEO navigating a hostile takeover. By 7 a.m., I was at the warehouse where the crew had already assembled, their breaths fogging in the crisp morning air as they double-checked harnesses and calibrated equipment with the precision of an orchestra tuning instruments before a symphony. Marcus handed me a travel mug of coffee without a word, the gesture of someone who understood that some mornings required silence instead of sympathy. Black, no sugar, just like the unyielding truth I was about to deliver. We went through the plan one final time, mapping out the sequence on a digital whiteboard. Prioritize high-value items to minimize risk. Coordinate crane lifts to avoid overlap. Ensure koi transfer maintained water parameters at optimal levels using portable monitors I'd sourced from aquaculture suppliers. The convoy would consist of 3 crane trucks with booms extending up to 100 feet. 2 flatbeds reinforced for heavy loads. 1 water tanker outfitted with oxygenation systems. And my personal pickup leading the charge. We'd park down the street at 9:45 a.m. at my signal. We'd enter the property and begin the extraction sequence. Trees first. Starting with the most valuable specimens whose market value had appreciated due to rarity. As per trends in the global horticulture market tracked by organizations like the International Plant Propagators Society, then the koi pond system. Draining and netting with care to prevent stress-induced health issues in the fish, then the irrigation network. Excavated without damaging surrounding structures. Remember, I told them, my voice carrying over the group like a commander's briefing. We are not destroying property. We are removing inventory, assets documented in our ledgers, insured under commercial policies that cover relocation up to $500. Everything we take belongs to Bennett Greenery. Appraised and certified. Everything we leave behind belongs to the property owner, including the bare earth we'll expose as a testament to their choices. 47 voices answered in unison. A chorus of determination. Clear. Then let's go get our trees. The convoy rolled out at 9:15 a.m. A rumbling procession of industrial vehicles that turned heads on the highway. Diesel engines growling like awakened beasts as we merged into traffic. The weight of our cargo shifting with each turn. I drove at the front in my pickup, watching in the rearview mirror as 7 massive trucks followed me through morning traffic like a steel and chrome parade. A mobile fortress of justice. We reached my parents' neighborhood. An affluent suburb where lawns were measured in acres and every house had a 3-car garage. Properties valued in the millions according to recent Zillow estimates showing a 15% year-over-year increase in luxury real estate. The houses here were what real estate agents called executive properties, owned by people who believed wealth was evidence of virtue. Their manicured exteriors hiding the same petty dramas as any other family. I pulled onto a side street with clear sightlines to my parents' driveway and killed the engine. Behind me, the convoy went silent, the sudden quiet amplifying the tension like the calm before a storm. Tom climbed down from his crane truck and walked up to my window. His boots crunching on gravel. "We wait?" he asked. His face etched with the focus of a veteran operator. "We wait." I pulled out my phone and opened a notes app where I'd been documenting everything. The timestamps from the video. The forwarded emails from David. The conversations logged with metadata for potential court use. Documentation is armor. Evidence is power. In a world where disputes often hinged on paper trails. As I'd learned from case studies in Harvard Business Review on corporate litigation. At 9:47 a.m., movement caught my eye. A convoy of black SUVs turned onto the street, followed by a champagne-colored Bentley that probably cost more than my entire equipment fleet. Its sleek lines gleaming under the winter sun like a symbol of unchecked opulence. The vehicles moved with the unhurried confidence of money that had forgotten what it felt like to wait for anything, foreign investors. Likely from groups like those based in Hong Kong or Dubai, funneling capital into U.S. real estate to diversify portfolios amid global economic shifts reported in the Wall Street Journal. I raised my binoculars, the lenses bringing the scene into sharp focus. Through the magnified view, I watched the cars pull into the circular driveway of my parents' estate. Doors opening with synchronized precision. Men in expensive suits emerged, 3 of them, plus a woman in a camel haircoat that probably cost what my crew made in a month. Her ensemble completed with accessories from brands like Hermes, exuding the aura of boardroom power. They moved like people accustomed to owning things. Airports, companies, politicians, their postures straight from years of commanding deference. Evan appeared at the front door, grinning so wide I could see it from 200 yards away. His teeth flashing like a shark's. He was wearing a suit I'd never seen before, new. Probably bought specifically for this meeting from a tailor on Savile Row. Judging by the cut, Scarlett stood beside him in a designer dress. Her Instagram-ready smile locked in place. Hair styled in waves that screamed professional glam from salons charging $500 a session. My father appeared next. Then my mother, both dressed like they were attending a country club gala rather than conducting a business transaction. My father in a blazer with subtle patterns. My mother in pearls that had been a family heirloom, now tainted by the day's events. I watched Evan gesture toward the backyard. Saw the investors follow him through the side gate, their steps measured and appraising. In moments, they'd be standing beside my koi pond, admiring the reflection of Japanese maples in crystal clear water, calculating how much extra they'd pay for this kind of craftsmanship, perhaps envisioning it as a status symbol in their portfolios. Unaware of the impending upheaval, I checked my watch. 9:55 a.m. I picked up my radio. The device crackling to life. All units. This is Nora. Move out. Behind me, 7 diesel engines roared to life. The sound was magnificent, thunder in mechanical form. The deep bass rumble of industrial power awakening, echoing through the quiet suburb like a declaration of war. I led the convoy around the corner, and we rolled up to the estate like a military incursion arriving to liberate occupied territory. Tires crunching on the paved drive. The lead crane truck backed through the open gate at exactly 10 a.m. Its warning beeper cutting through the morning air like an alarm. Piercing and insistent, I saw Evan's head snap around. Saw his expression cycle through confusion, recognition, and then pure, crystalline horror, a mask cracking under pressure. He started running, his polished shoes slipping on the dew-kissed grass. I stepped out of my truck and walked calmly toward the backyard, carrying the 3-ring binder under my arm like a shield of irrefutable truth. Behind me, my crew deployed with practiced efficiency, Marcus coordinating tree removal with hand signals honed from years on noisy sites. Jenny managing equipment placement. Clipboard in hand tracking serial numbers. Tom positioning the crane with joystick precision. His focus unbroken. The backyard was transformed from my last visit. Someone had added white tent canopies fluttering in the breeze and cocktail tables set with crystal stemware. Classical music playing from hidden speakers. Perhaps Vivaldi's Four Seasons to evoke elegance. The investors stood on the stone patio overlooking the koi pond. Champagne flutes in hand, looking at the garden the way collectors examined rare paintings at Sotheby's auctions. Appraising value with detached expertise. Evan reached me just as I entered through the gate. His face gone pale, his expensive suit already rumpled from the sprint. Sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill. Nora. His voice cracked on my name. A fracture in his facade. What are you? You can't. He gestured wildly at the trucks. I have clients here. I didn't look at him. My gaze fixed ahead as I walked past. The scent of his cologne, something sharp and overpriced, clashing with the earthy aroma of the garden. Instead, I approached the group of investors who had turned to watch this unexpected development with the detached interest of people accustomed to reality occasionally diverging from their expectations. Perhaps viewing it as a quirky American family drama. I raised a small megaphone, nothing aggressive. Just enough to be heard over the equipment noise. Its amplification clear and professional. Good morning, gentlemen, madam, I said, my tone steady and courteous. Infused with the authority of someone who commanded boardrooms and job sites alike. I apologize for the interruption. My name is Nora Bennett, owner and CEO of Bennett Greenery. I paused, letting the words sink in as the first crane's hydraulics whirred to life nearby. The garden you're currently viewing is not part of the real estate. It consists of inventory owned by my company and consigned to this property under a temporary display agreement. Fully documented and enforceable under state law. That agreement has been terminated due to asset security concerns. This viewing is over. One of the investors, an older man with silver hair and the particular stillness of serious wealth, perhaps a tycoon from Asia's tech boom. Given the subtle accents I'd overheard, raised an eyebrow. His curiosity piqued rather than alarmed. And you are? The landscape architect who designed and installed everything you're looking at. I replied, meeting his gaze evenly, the daughter of the homeowners and the person who's about to remove $300 worth of company property. Reclaiming what's rightfully mine in a move that's not just legal but necessary. Evan had recovered enough to start shouting. His voice rising in pitch like a cornered animal. This is insane, officer. He was gesturing frantically toward a bored-looking police officer who'd been hired. I assumed. To provide security for the showing, private detail. Uniform crisp but eyes weary from dealing with entitled disputes. Arrest her. She's trespassing. She's destroying property. The officer walked over, hand resting casually on his belt. His stance neutral but alert. He was about 50, with the weathered look of someone who'd spent decades dealing with family disputes and rich people's problems. Perhaps having mediated similar scenes in upscale neighborhoods where money amplified egos. Ma'am, what's going on here? He asked. His tone even, trained from academy protocols. I didn't argue. I didn't explain in a flurry of words. I simply opened the binder and handed it to him. Already tabbed to the relevant sections with color-coded precision, red for ownership. Blue for certifications. Tab 1. Consignment agreement signed by the property owner. Establishing Bennett Greenery's ownership of all botanical specimens and installations. Notarized and filed. Tab 2. Technical certification from horticultural engineers confirming that all trees are planted in root control barriers. Making them movable chattels rather than real estate fixtures. With diagrams and expert affidavits. Tab 3. Proof of ownership including purchase receipts and RFID tracking for all koi. Cross-referenced with insurance policies. The officer read slowly, flipping between tabs, his expression shifting from skepticism to comprehension to something approaching professional respect. Nodding as he absorbed the legalese. He closed the binder and turned to Evan, handing it back to me. Sir, this is a civil matter regarding personal property. She has documentation proving these trees and installations are movable company assets, chattels, not fixtures. As per Property Code Section 660, I can't stop her from retrieving her own property. But she's ruining the sale. Evan's face cycled through several colors. Veins bulging in his neck. That's a civil matter, sir. Not a criminal one. Take it to court if you disagree. Behind him, my mother had appeared, her hand pressed to her mouth in horror. Eyes wide as if witnessing a catastrophe. My father stood frozen on the patio. Champagne glass still in hand. His expression unreadable, a mix of shock and dawning regret. Perhaps. I turned back to the investors, who were watching this unfold with the kind of fascinated attention people usually reserved for car accidents or viral scandals. Again, my apologies for the disruption, I said, maintaining composure. If you're interested in the property itself, sans the enhancements, I recommend conducting your viewing after the current complications are resolved. The bare land might suit your needs better anyway. The silver-haired investor smiled slightly, knowing, a glint of amusement in his eyes. I think we've seen enough. Good luck with your business, Miss Bennett. They turned and walked back toward their vehicles, moving with the unhurried grace of people for whom this inconvenience was merely amusing rather than devastating. Their footsteps echoing on the drive like retreating footsteps from a failed negotiation. I waited until they'd cleared the gate, the Bentley's doors closing with soft thuds. Then I turned to Marcus and gave the signal, my hand slicing the air decisively. Extract everything. The first crane moved into position beside the oldest podocarpus tree, a 40-year-old specimen I'd sourced from a specialty nursery in Oregon. Transported cross-country in climate-controlled trucks, and installed with the kind of care usually reserved for priceless artifacts, its trunk gnarled like ancient wisdom. Leaves a deep green canopy. It was worth $60. Its value confirmed by appraisals from the American Nursery and Landscape Association. Tom operated the crane with surgeon-like precision, the controls responding to his touch as if alive. The support straps went around the trunk, carefully positioned to avoid bark damage using padded materials I'd specified. The crane's hydraulics hissed, a mechanical whisper building to a crescendo. The straps tightened. Then, with a deep, wet-tearing sound that made my mother gasp, a visceral rip echoing through the air, the tree began to rise. Because of the root control bag, the extraction was clinically precise. The fabric containing the root ball like a high-tech cocoon, preventing soil scatter. There was no violent ripping of earth, the tree lifted clean. Its root ball contained in the industrial fabric cylinder like a plug being pulled from a socket, leaving behind a perfectly round, dark geometric void in the manicured lawn, 3 feet wide, 2 feet deep, a stark black circle against the green. It looked less like a hole and more like a missing component in a complex machine. A void screaming of absence. Secure it and move to specimen 2. I said into my radio, my voice calm over the static. The ballet continued. Another tree rose into the air, its branches swaying gently as it was hoisted. Another perfect black circle opened in the green grass. The earth below rich and loamy from years of my amendments. The Japanese maples came next, their delicate structures handled with kid gloves, then the ornamental cherries. Blossoms dormant but promising spring renewal, then the understory plantings. Shrubs and perennials worth tens of thousands. Lifted in clusters. Scarlet appeared at my elbow, her face streaked with mascara, eyes red from tears that seemed more performative than genuine. Nora, please. Please stop. Her voice broke, a plea laced with desperation. We can talk about this. We can work something out. I didn't look at her, my focus on the crew's progress. There's nothing to work out. I'm taking back my property, assets I've nurtured, invested in, protected. But the garden was never yours, it was a gift. Behind us, the industrial pumps roared to life, their motors humming like angry bees. My crew lowered them into the koi pond, and within seconds, the crystal-clear water began draining into the tanker truck, bubbles rising as the level dropped, revealing the carefully balanced ecosystem I'd maintained with pH balancers and beneficial bacteria. The koi, each one tagged, documented, and worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, descendants of prize-winning lines from Japanese breeders, were netted and transferred to portable holding tanks with professional care. Their scales flashing in the sunlight like living gems. As the water level dropped, the pond's true nature became visible, a concrete basin. Ugly and utilitarian, stained with algae that I'd kept at bay through weekly treatments. Crisscrossed with exposed PVC pipes and electrical conduits for the filtration I'd designed. Without water and the careful biology I'd maintained, drawing from aquaculture research in journals like Aquaculture International, it looked like what it really was. An empty hole lined with aging concrete. Devoid of the magic I'd infused. The water drained completely, the pond sitting exposed and pathetic like a swimming pool in winter. Echoes of dripping water the only sound. One of the investors, the woman in the camel hair coat, had paused at the gate to watch, her expression shifting from curiosity to disdain. She looked at the devastation. Looked at Evan with something between disgust and pity, perhaps recognizing the hallmarks of a botched deal, and walked away. Her heels clicking decisively, the Bentley's engine started. A low purr of luxury, the convoy of SUVs followed. Tires crunching gravel as they departed. They left without another word. The sale was over, the air thick with the scent of exposed soil and defeat.